Hello lovely people, and welcome back to my channel. It's nice to have you here, and I also want to say hello to those who are joining or coming to this channel for the first time. My name is Miranda, and I'm the founder of Miranda's Designs and Creations. I post weekly videos on beginner friendly tutorials for those who are just going into sewing, or if you're considering sewing and you don't know where to start from, perhaps this is a channel you'd consider subscribing to. So today today I just want us to learn how to make a basic skirt block, because from this skirt you can actually alter it to make different types of skirts, but it's very important for you to know how to make this basic block, and then from there you can build on other styles and work from there. So let's get started. I'm going to post this I'm going to put these measurements up so that you can follow how I was able to do the calculations and the measurements that go with making a skirt. And these are my measurements, so this is a skirt that will be tailored to my size. Okay, so I'll be working with a waist of 37 inches. My hip is 45 inches. The skirt length is 22, and I think I'm not going to put a band, so I'm just going to attach an interfacing to it. So I'll just keep the length at 22, so that's the total length of the skirt will be 22 inches. And then from the waist to the hip, it's 8 inches. Actually, I think I'll work with 9 inches. And then the bust span, that is the nipple to nipple distance, mine is 8 inches. Okay, so we're going to be dividing the waist by 4, the hip by 4, and the bust measurement, the bust span measurement by 2. Okay, so I just wanted you to follow, but I'm going to put these measurements up so that you can work along, and you can probably substitute those with your own measurements and make a skirt for yourself or for someone, a loved one. Okay, so here you can see I just drew this line as a starting point, so that will be the measurement of where my waistline will be. Okay, so that's just to help me start my measurements. Okay, so from that line I'm going to draw a line downwards to my hip measurement. Okay, so I'm just going to place my ruler there. You can also use your measuring tape, whichever works for you. Actually, you can do that. So from the waist to my hip, I'm going to work with a distance of 9 inches. You can use 8 depending on your height. Okay, so I'm going to use 9 inches. And then from the waist to the total length of the skirt, I'm just going to pull this up. Okay, so from the waistline, the total skirt length is 22 inches. Okay, so I'm just going to make a line, and then so from that 9-inch mark and this 22-inch mark, I'm going to draw a horizontal line. Okay, so I'm just going to use a ruler, and to help me draw a straight line that's not skewed, let me just do this. So I'm just going to mark 9 inches that way, another 9 inches, and then I'm going to connect that line. Okay, so my hip clip. And then again from the 22-inch mark. Okay, I'm going to remove this. My workspace is short, sorry for that. Okay, so I'm going to mark 22 inches down. This is just to help me draw a line that's not skewed. Okay, you can buy, there's a proper ruler that you can buy for that, and it will help you to draw straight and accurate lines. Otherwise, you can do this where you just make those dots, and then you're going to connect it so that you have those horizontal lines that we're going to be working with. Okay, so a skirt block is very, very easy to make, because this is basic. So you just connect these dots. I'm just going to reinforce the line horizontally that way. Okay, and then the 9-inch mark also, that is your waist to hip measurement. You can use 8 inches, but I'm going to use 9. Okay, this looks a little bit skewed, but anyway, so that should be about, yeah, 9 inches. Okay, okay, so it will get skewed there. Okay, and just get rid of the first line. Okay, not a very good eraser, unfortunately, but yeah, you can use that for just clearing the first line. Okay, so you have your 3 horizontal lines. So this, the first one is our starting point, so that will represent our waist measurement, and then we have the hip measurement. So from my waist to my hip, it's 9 inches. You have to measure yours or your clients in order to be certain, and then this is the length of the skirt. Okay, so now we're going to start imputing our measurements, and we'll be doing that on the, so I'll be moving around this paper so that you can see. So on the waist measurement, we're going to impute the waist circumference measurement that we took. For me, my waist was 37, so I'm working with 37 inches. So 37 divided by 4. Okay, we're going to divide that by 4. So for me that would give me about 9.25. okay, so you mark that 9.25. okay, and then you do the same to the waist measurement. You're also, rather, to the hip measurement, you're also going to divide that hip measurement by 4. okay, you are dividing it by 4 because when you look at your body, it is divided in kind of 4 sections. So you have the right and the left on the front part, and then the same at the back. So those are kind of like three parts, 4 parts of your body in those areas. Okay, so when you come to the waist measurement, we were working with rather to the hip measurement. My hip is 45, so you also have to measure yours, or the person that you're making the skirt for. Okay, so mine was 45 divided by 4 gives you about 11.25. so you're just going to note that down, and then the measurement, this measurement that you have for your hip, you bring it down to the hem of your skirt, so it's going to be the same measurement. Okay, so it's also going to be 11.25. Now, depending on what you are making, especially if your skirt is not a stretchy one, you want maybe to add an ease there, maybe you can add ease of, let's say, half an inch, or yeah, because I think 1 inch is too much. You can add half an inch on the hip. I like my waist to be snug and nicely, so I normally don't put ease to my waist. I would put about half inch ease to my hip measurement. So you just come there and mark that ease. Okay, but I'm not going to add ease on that one because I want to use this for another skirt, or to which I'll be making another tutorial, and I think most likely I will use a stretch fabric, so I don't want to add any excesses. But if you want to have some ease on your hip, you can add just about half inch is fine. Okay, so after drawing those lines, putting in those measurements on your waist, so again I'm going to go through on your waist measurement. You take the measurement that you took, that's your waist circumference, you divide it by 4. Whatever you get, you measure it from this. So this will be your center front. Okay, and when you put it on your fabric, we're going to cut this on fold. Okay, so you put that measurement that you get after you divide your waist measurement by 4, you put it, you mark it there on the waistline. You come to your hip measurement, you take that measurement, you divide it by 4, and you mark it there. If you want to add some ease to it, you can add about half inch. The same measurement that you have on your hip, you just transfer that to the bottom of your skirt. Okay, I'm going to push this up so that you can see where that paper ends. Okay, so the same measurement that you take for your hip, you just bring it down to your hemline. This will be your hemline. Okay, and then now what you do is just go ahead to join these points. But before that, if you are going to be adding a dart, especially for fabrics that do not stretch, remember one of the measurements that we're working with also is your bust span. That is your nipple to nipple distance, and you're going to use that measurement to help you determine where you're going to place your dart. Okay, so my nipple to nipple measurement is 8 inches, and then I'm going to divide that by 2. Okay, so that will give me an indication of where my dart will lie. Okay, so I'm just going to measure that. So 8 divided by 2 is 4, and I'm just going to mark that. Okay, I'll mark that all the way. Okay, and then I'm just going to connect that. I'm going to connect that line. Okay, so I'm marking from the center front. Okay, I mark 4 inches, which is half of the nipple to nipple distance. Okay, all right. So after you've decided where you're going to place your dart, so that's your dart placement position, which you get by using your nipple to nipple distance. So you're going to divide that measurement by 2. Mine is 8 divided by 2, it gave me 4. So from the center front here, this will be your center front. Okay, you measure 4 inches in this way so that I could get to that position, right? You can see this gives me exactly 4 inches. So I made that dotted line there just as a guide, and then from there I also came down. So from the waistline I came down 4 inches, so I put that mark there to guide me. And then I'm just going to draw a straight line. You just draw a straight line this way. Okay, that will indicate how long your dart will be. Okay, and then from the top here on the waistline, you are going to you can decide the size of your dart. I'm going to use 1 inch, so that is 0.5 inches on either side of the dart leg. Okay, so come here and you measure 0.5 on this side, another 0.5 inches on the other side. Okay, this looks a little bit wide. Okay, yeah, so it's there and there. So this is a total of 1 inch. It will be 0.5 on one side, 0.5 inches on the other side. And then the next thing is you just connect that leg or those 2 legs to form your dart on the front of your skirt. So you just join, you're going to join this edge to that one, and then this other one from that edge to that side. Okay, and then you have your dart formed. So this is about 4 inches and then 1 inch wide, 0.5 on either edge. So remember, when we took our measurement, our waist measurement was 37 divided by 4, it gave us 9.25. okay, it was about 9.25. you can see there, you see 9.25. so this was the mark where that measurement was. That was the mark for the hip measurement. So now, because we've added the dart, and when we are sewing, we are going to take in this 1 inch. It means we have to add back this 1 inch to that side, because if you don't add back this 1 inch, when you sew, the skirt is going to be small on you, especially if you are using or sewing on a non-stretchy fabric. You're going to run short of fabric. So you measure out the size of your dart. We know it's 1 inch. I don't know what size dart you're going to use, but I think the slimmer the person, the smaller the dart should be. Okay, so you come back here and you add back that 1 inch for your dart. Okay, and because this is paper, I'm not going to add I was going to say I was not going to add the allowance, but maybe I should, so that you can see once it's drawn. But otherwise, if you don't add your sewing allowance on your pattern, you can add that when you're cutting your fabric. Okay, so this 1 inch, we are just putting it back, as this will be taken in when we are sewing. Okay, then we come to our hip. Our hip measurement was 45 divided by 4, it gave us 11.25. Okay, if you want, you can add an allowance if you want some ease, not too much. So if you want an allowance there, maybe just ½ inch is fine. Okay, ½ inch is fine. And so then it means whatever you have here, you have to transfer it back to the hem of your skirt. So you're going to take this exact measurement, okay, and we're going to transfer it back to your hemline. Okay, there. So this is if you want to make just a basic skirt, a skirt block. You don't want it to be tapered or to have a pencil shape by the bottom. You can leave it that way, and the next thing is just to connect those lines, and then your pattern will be done, the front pattern. But I want mine to be a little bit pencil. I want it tapered here at the hem. So what I will do, I will come to this point, okay, and I would come in by 2 inches. Okay, you can come in by 1 inch, you can come in by 1.5. It depends on how tapered you want it or how pencil you want it. I want mine to be quite you know, tapered, so I'm thinking 2 inches. Maybe I'll do even 2.5 inches is fine. Okay, because I really want it tapered at the bottom. So you can decide how wide or how thin you want it at the bottom if you're going to be making a pencil skirt. Okay, so the next thing is just to join those points, and I'm going to use my curved ruler here, because remember the human bodies are not like pointed and straight. They don't have sharp edges. Okay, so we have curves, and you can use this curved ruler to help you achieve those nice curves. Okay, so we're just going to draw that part, and we're going to join it to our 2.5 inch mark. Just want to verify that. Yeah, so it's this one. I'm going to draw a straight line from the hip to that 2.5 inch mark. Okay, so you can see the shape for me. It has kind of skewed on the inside, and but also you can leave it that way if you just want it to be a straight basic skirt. You can still leave it. So I just want to smoothen out that sharp curve there with my ruler. Okay, so that I have something very nice. I was looking for my eraser, can't find it, but anyway, so it will come that way. And then we have to do one more thing before we go on to add our allowances on the pattern. Okay, so now here, because you want the skirt to sit nicely on your waist, you are going to raise this point to about between 0.5 and 0.75. I'm going to use 0.75, so I'm just going to measure that out, and then I'm going to connect it back to this point here. Okay, we're going to connect it back to our original waistline, because when you wear it, you want it to sit very nicely. So I'm just going up by 0.75. You can use ½ inch, it's still fine. Okay, so then you just extend this line here. Okay, let me put this there so that it creates some room. My workspace is small. Okay, so you just come up here and connect it to that new point, so it will be raised at that point. Okay, and the next thing you do is just, you can use your ruler to just join it back to the original waistline. Okay, like that. So you have like this raised shape there, so that way your skirt is going to sit very, very nicely at your waistline. Okay, so this is our pencil skirt, or our basic skirt. If you don't want it to be penciled, you saw from here, you just go straight down right up to the hemline. Okay, up to there. but I wanted mine to be a little bit tapered and penciled, and I think it looks nice. I like the shape. So the next thing you can do is just to add your sewing allowances. So it depends on what allowance you use when you're sewing. I normally just go with 1/2 inch because I don't want too much bulk after I've sewn it. Okay, don't want to have too much bulk inside of the garment. So I'm just going around to put that 1/2 inch, and then I'm just going to join those dotted lines. Okay, some people can easily eyeball the 1/2 inch, 1 inch, but I'm doing this especially for beginners. If you cannot just look and estimate that that's 1/2 inch, go ahead to mark it. Take your time. This is a learning process, and once you are used to doing this, you will just by looking, you will know that this is 1/2 inch, this is more than 1/2 inch, and then you can carry on. So the next thing will just be to connect those dotted lines, and then we're going to have our allowances added. So I'm going to add 1/2 inch all around, and then at the bottom here I'm going to put 1 inch. Okay, because I'm going to fold it in with lining probably. So I want to cut the lining shorter so that the main fabric will fold over maybe about 1 inch or so. So I can even add, maybe I'll add even 2 inches to allow me to do that. Otherwise, it depends on how you want to finish off your hems. You can leave it at 1 inch if you're just going to fold it in once. Okay, so I've gone on to add the sewing allowances. So from the top of the waist there all the way to the side seam, I added only 1/2 inch, as you can see, 1/2 inch. And then at the bottom of the skirt I decided to add 1.5 inches. So you can add the allowances according to what you like. This I'm doing because I want to turn the skirt with a lining, so I want to have enough fabric that will, you know, be able to fold over also, because I'm going to be cutting my lining shorter than the main fabric. So the next thing that's left is to cut this, and then we're going to go to our back block. So I'm just going to cut, and I'm cutting on the outer lines, which is our sewing allowances. So when we put this on fabric, we're just going to cut the fabric straight, since we've already added the allowances. Okay, so yeah, I'm just cutting this. Oops, I think I went into the sewing allowance a little bit there. Okay, so I'm just going to finish cutting it off, and then we're going to go and cut the back. So what I did here, if you noticed, after adding this allowance here at the waist, I just extended the dart legs to reach the sewing allowance that I added. Okay, so our front block is done. You can actually label it if you want, so that you don't get confused, but the back block has got some distinguishing parts that really don't come on the first part, but you can go ahead to do that if you think you're going to get confused. Okay, so here again I just want to I wanted to draw a line there, but I'll leave it here. So I want to explain something that I've done here. Okay, so our front block is done. I was able to cut it. You can see it has a pencil shape, and it's got that side that is elevated. Okay, so here what I did on this place where I'm going to be marking the back bodice, you can see there is a line, a vertical line that I've drawn here. I hope that you can see it. Okay, so what I did was I measured actually 2 inches, and this is going to be our zipper allowance. Remember, my skirt is going to have a zipper at the back. Okay, so I left this allowance, and even if what I'm making doesn't have a zipper allowance, I can just fold in the allowance and go on to trace out the back. Okay, so if you see, this is about 2 inches. I measured 2 inches all the way down, and then I just connected it with a horizontal line. Okay, rather with a vertical line. So now the next thing is I'm just going to place this, let me put the ruler here. I'm going to place the front block like this beside that line. You see this vertical line that I drew? That is where I'm going to place the pattern, so that the back will have this zipper allowance. So this here is going to be our zipper allowance. So don't get confused, or maybe you might wonder why now are we adding this 2 inches at the back borders. Okay, because when you're sewing, you're going to sew up to maybe, let's say, 8 inches where your zipper is going to sit. So you need to have that allowance. Otherwise, if you don't do this and your fabric doesn't stretch, you're going to also run short. When you place the zipper, it means you have eaten into the fabric that is supposed to make the body of the skirt. I hope you understand that. Okay, so I'm just going to place it there, and you can place some weights if you have a weight, so that your paper doesn't move, okay, or your pattern doesn't move. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a tracing wheel, rather. I'm going to use a tracing wheel, and we're going to trace out this skirt, because you already have the block. Okay, it's times 2 work if you have to start drawing it from 0, but you can do that if you want to. Maybe it will help you as a practice. So what I'm just going to do, I'm going to use this, and I'm just going to draw on the lines, and then I'll trace on the lines, and then I'll be able to draw them on the back bodies. Okay, so I'm going to start with where the sewing allowance is. Okay, and just make that impression, and then I'll go back to draw the back bodies. Okay, I'm also going to take that edge as the one that had the sewing allowance. So these sharp teeth make an impression on the paper, and it will enable you to see easily where it passed, and then you can just go in with your paper, with your pencil, pen or marker, or whatever it is you're using, to draw off the pattern. Okay, I'm also going to follow this, so that when we draw on the back pattern, you can distinguish where the actual measurement ends and where the sewing allowance is. Okay, so I'll just go ahead to do the tracing. I will trace on all the lines. Okay, it just makes it easy. I'm also going to trace this dot point, though I'm going to make some changes there, because the back dot is longer than the front dot. Okay, and then here we're going to trace this original waistline, because there is some changes that we have to make to this elevation there. Okay, so I'm just going to go on that original waistline that I marked in red. Hope you can see that. Okay, I'm also going to mark out where the zipper allowance actually ends, so that as we draw, you are able to distinguish where is the center back. Because now when you draw the back, this part that was the center front on the front bodies, okay, it will now become your center back. Okay, so I'm just going to write this so that you can distinguish which is which. Okay, I'm going to just pass this tracing wheel, and then we can go in to draw with our pencil. I think we have our pattern there. So now it will be easy just to go in and draw those very quickly. So I'm just going to follow the impressions, okay, because I can see where the wheel was passing. Okay, so you trace this. Okay, we're going to smoothen that with a curved ruler, so don't worry about that. I just want to put the lines there so that you can see them clearly before we make. So it's just about 2 changes that we need to make. We need to make an adjustment to them. So we've already made this adjustment for the zipper. We need to make the adjustment on the waist, and then that will be it. Okay, so what I normally do, something like a skirt block, I would trace it out on a paper and try to put it on something hard like cardboard, because I know this is a pattern that I'll be using quite frequently. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the tutorial, you can actually you can modify this skirt block to make different designs with it. So you don't want to start all over from zero, now tracing your basic pattern. I mean, if you, as time goes on, obviously this is something that you will easily be able to do. You won't even need sometimes to trace it out on paper. You can immediately put it on your fabric and you go ahead to cut. Okay, but as a learning process, rather do it on paper first, because it will also allow you to see some mistakes. If you've made a mistake, you will easily be able to see and correct it before you go and cut it on fabric. Okay, so I was just coming in with my curve there. Okay, so we have our block here. I hope that it's visible to you. We have our block, but remember I said we needed to make some changes. So I'm also going to make a change to the length of the dart. So it's 3 modifications that you do to the back pattern. You need to add your zipper allowance, okay? Otherwise you're going to run short of fabric after you've inserted your zipper at the back. Okay, you need to make your back dart longer than the front dart. Remember our front dart was about 4 inches, so I'm going to make the back dart about 6 inches. So I extend it to 6 inches, and then, okay, so that's about 6 inches. You can see, I hope that's visible to you. I'm going to move that closer. So you can see I have about 6 inches, and then you come on top and you're going to put the same dart width. Okay, we used 1 inch in the other at the front of the skirt, so we're going to use the same, otherwise you might get into issues and your skirt can look funny. So the next thing is just for you to draw in the dart legs. So you come to where the dart ends and just connect it to those 2 lines that you've drawn, or those 2 points that you've drawn on your waistline. Okay, like that. So then you have your dart in there, and then now you're going to elevate the waist, but with a twist. Okay, remember we came up by 0.75, so you're going to use that same measurement. You're going to take that same measurement. Okay, you just want to make that. Okay, so you come in again by 0.75. So what you did, the same measurement that you did at the front, so this is going to get elevated there. Okay, so but now here, remember at the front we just joined this one back to the original waistline, but at the back what you're going to do is you're going to come down by ½ inch. So from the waist you go down ½ inch here. Okay, let me move this closer so you can see. Okay, so from the let me use the side that you can see easily. Okay, so here, okay, you're going to come down from the waist, come down by ½ inch, so it should be somewhere there. Okay, and then you're just going to join this down to this ½ inch mark that you have drawn, and you should be good to go. Okay, so you just draw this in that way. Okay, my tracing wheel falling down there. Okay, so now you want to use something heavy. Okay, so you can get these tools in shops where they sell fabric and sewing machines. Normally they have that. Okay, so what you want to do is to just come down to that point. Okay, I want to avoid that in my frame, so you're just going to come into that point. Okay, wasn't so smooth. Okay, Yeah, so you have something like that. So when you are cutting your back, you're going to come that way, okay? And then you can just add your allowance to this part on the top, okay? Because the other sides, remember, it has already got the sewing allowances. So you're going to add ½ inch to this part, and then you're ready to cut, okay? Okay, so I went on to add the allowances. So you could see after going up 0.75, we came down by 0.5. So it's just connecting that line and then adding the sewing allowance. This is ½ inch sewing allowance, and then we have our zipper allowance as well. So this is our back. I'm just going to write here back. And I also went on to use a marker pen because I noticed that the pencil was quite faint. Not sure that you were able to see what I did before. So a few things that you have to note: the differences between the front and the back. This is the zip allowance. So there's about 3 things that you need to modify on the back bodies compared to the front bodies, okay? So first of all is you have to add the zipper allowance. You can add 1 inch, you can add 1.5. I prefer to have more than less in this particular instance. So I'd rather work with 2 inches. If it's too much, you can always trim it off. It's better for you to have excess than to run short of fabric, because then it becomes a real challenge for you to resolve that problem, okay? And then on the waistline, you will notice that we came down by, we went up first of all when you reach to that edge, okay, where you elevate this part, we went up 0.75 like on the front bodies of the skirt block, and then instead of just joining it to the original waist, we came down here by 0.5. So you kind of curve it down to this point, and then here I just added the sewing allowance, okay? So that's the difference number 2. Number 1 is the zip allowance. Number 2 is how the curve on the waist will come down by 0.5 on the center back, okay? And then the third one, the third difference with the front block is the length of your dart. The dart at the back will always be, or should be, longer than the front dart. Our front dart was 4 inches, okay? This one is 6 inches, okay? It's about 2 inches longer. So you can see I have about exactly 6 inches there. So your back block must have that modification. So other than that, I just added 1 inch, rather ½ inch sewing allowance to the side, and then at the edge I did the same thing. I added 1.5. So our block is ready, and we can go ahead to cut this. So when you are cutting it on fabric, always remember, so what I used to do when I just started sewing, I just put notes for myself, okay? And if I had cut the block or the pattern without allowances, I would always put arrows like that and saying to myself, add sewing allowance, okay? Just for me to remember, or add zipper allowance. So here, if you haven't added this sewing allowance, you just write a note there so that you remember, okay? When you are cutting this, we've already added the sewing allowances. We've already added sewing allowances. We already had sewing allowances. So it's just a matter of cutting, okay? When you cut on fabric. And also, as you cut this on your fabric, you are going to cut, so this one, okay? You can write a note to yourself and say cut ×2, okay? Because you are going to open this part where the zipper is going to be. So you put notes like that if you think you will not remember. And then when it's time to cut, unless of course your skirt is not going to have a zipper at the back, then you just need to cut 1 on 4. You cut it the same way you would cut the front part, okay? So I normally I used to put notes to myself. I still do sometimes, especially if it's a new style design that I've not cut before. I normally write some notes to myself so that when I'm cutting on fabric, I remember, okay? But as you go along, it will become almost like a second nature, and you will be able to remember these things without even having to write those notes for yourself, okay? So here we have our 2 blocks. So when you are cutting on fabric for your front block, this one, okay, when you are cutting this one, you are going to cut this on fold. You can see when we place it here on the back bodice, you can see that the front it's smaller because of the zipper allowance. It doesn't have the zipper allowance, and also the dart length, you can see the difference. This one is, the front one is shorter, okay? So we measure this from there, so you can see the front one is giving me about exactly 4 inches there, okay? So this is 4 inches, and this one, the back one, is 6 inches. Like I said, it's about 6 inches, okay? So you can see that, okay? So this one, the front one has got a shorter dart length, and then it has no zipper allowance, okay? And then when you elevate here, okay, when you elevate here, you just join it straight to this waistline. On the back one, we came down by ½ inch, okay, which is about 1 centimeter if you're using centimeters. So ½ inch there, and then you join this line straight to there, to that ½ inch mark. And then you can also, okay, so I said front, and you can put those knots as well. This one, since it's going to be on front, when you put it on fabric, you are going to be cutting this, okay? So when you cut the front skirt block, you are going to put this on fold. This one is your center front, okay? So this is going to be on fold, so that when you open the fabric, it will cover the entire front piece. So you cut this ×1 on fold, okay? So that is how you go about to make your skirt block. So now you are ready to go. You can place this on your fabric and cut, and you can sew that beautiful skirt. Let me see how your skirt will look like, and yeah, I'll be very happy to see what you'll come up with. So thank you very much for watching this tutorial. I want to appreciate you. I really do not take you for granted. Thank you very much. I wish you a blessed week. I'll see you on our next tutorial, and please remember to subscribe if you find this content helpful.